Call Me Beloved, celebrating Kwanzaa. The best way to know more about the customs and cultural traditions of people around the world is by their ceremonies, festivals, and celebrations. In Poland, the Great Dragon Parade is celebrated once a year to pay tribute to one of Krakow's oldest legends about a dragon that lived in a cave under a castle. In India, Festival of Colors mark the beginning of spring and is a celebration of good over evil. In northern Thailand, there is the Flower Festival with intricately decorated flower parade floats and a Ms. Flower Festival beauty competition. Dia de Muertos, Day of the Dead, is a festival held in Mexico that has been celebrated since Aztec times, incorporating pre-Hispanic elements. Hawaiians celebrate the Merry Monarch Festival over a period of 3 days, with traditional and modern Hawaiian dance and intense hula competitions with participants from around the world. In Armenia, the annual pagan festival of Vadabar still takes place, celebrating the goddess of water, love, beauty, and fertility. While these festivals have different meanings, what they all have in common is the particularity of place to the people on the land where they are celebrating. Africans in America lost a sense of rooted place taken from their homeland by the slave trade through the Middle Passage. But when Dr. Maulana Karenga created Kwanzaa in 1966, it was to be the first Pan-African holiday. In his words, the goal was to give Blacks an alternative to the existing holidays and an opportunity to celebrate themselves and their history, rather than imitating practices of the dominant society. Celebrations occur throughout the year and provide opportunities for all of us to learn about the different beliefs and festivals celebrated by children and adults around the world. What we here in the West consider the holiday season is a wonderful time of year because it provides time for us to connect with family, friends, and our community in meaningful ways. It's also an ideal opportunity to learn about and share in each other's cultural celebrations and traditions, to feel part of an inclusive and diverse community. Connecting with others and learning about their cultural celebrations and traditions is an important part of developing intercultural understanding. It's also important for children to learn from each other how and why people celebrate and begin to understand that everyone's traditions and practices hold special meaning for them, just as theirs do for themselves. It helps us all to learn about and appreciate diversity, our differences, similarities, and to understand more about our own and each other's identity. However, when first introduced in 1966, there was confusion about Kwanzaa's intended purpose among the very people it was created for. Sadly, because of the 400 years of ancestral enslavement and European enculturation, there was a deep divide and dissonance from African culture, and a large majority of African Americans rejected it. What we don't understand, we fear. What we fear, we judge. Moreover, it requires acknowledging that your fear is based on a lack of understanding, followed by a willingness to make an effort to rectify it. The greatest fear of the Kwanzaa celebration was confusing the new cultural holiday as one that would replace the Christian holy day of Christmas. However, over time, there was a willingness to set aside preconceptions and fears, to question personal beliefs and assumptions. The name Kwanzaa is Swahili and inspired by African first fruit traditions. The rituals of the celebration promote African traditions and Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles of African heritage. Karenga described Kwanzaa as a communitarian African philosophy, essentially the beloved community. A group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common, a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. It may not have been seen as such in 1966, but creating a beloved community within a group who had never been viewed as beloved since arrival on these shores was an act of radical love. Is it any wonder that after centuries of marginalization and cultural divisiveness superimposed by others on this group, many were confused by the very idea of a celebration of unity and harmony, especially created for people of African descent. Celebrated over 7 days, Kwanzaa emphasizes unity, pride in family, and community. The mat represents the foundation of African traditions and history. The kinara holds 7 candles that represent the stock from which all African ancestors come. Each candle, 3 green, 3 red, and 1 black, represents a different principle in the African people and their struggles. On the first day, we light the black candle in the middle, which is the principle of umoja, which means unity. The corn represents African children and the promise of their future. 1 ear of corn is set out for each child in the family, and in a family without children, 1 ear is set out symbolically to represent the children of the community. The unity cup symbolizes the first principle and the unity of family and the African people. It's used to pour the libation for family and friends. Gifts are given to educate and enrich the children, which may include a book, a piece of art, or an educational toy. At least one of the gifts to symbolize the African heritage. Celebrating Kwanzaa serves as a reminder that working together for a common goal strengthens the love of community and those who inhabit it. It is in community that we will have our greatest impact. Not just about a community of like-minded people or a social club or a discussion group, but full mind, body, and spirit community with one another. However, it must begin with asking oneself, am I willing to allow love into my heart? Am I willing to look at creation lovingly? Am I willing to manifest more love in the world? When I fail to be as loving as I should be, am I willing to forgive myself? Am I willing to forgive others? There are many sermons written about the beloved community. Moreover, there are quotes about it from both Josiah Royce, founder of American Idealism, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The beloved community is compared to the kingdom of God, utopia, nirvana, and the harmony of all life. But when we say that we are growing beloved community, are we speaking of one that we are comfortable in or with a diversity that we have yet to understand? A community that is merely comfortable for those already there runs the risk of being walled. Our congregations do not exist in isolation. They exist in this world, this imperfect world, where basic needs go unmet and where oppression is the water in which we swim. We cannot get there in small insular pockets. Therefore, the beloved community cannot happen merely inside of a congregation. Inside the congregation is where our spirits are nurtured so that we can carry out the work in the real world. Inside the congregation is where we practice the loving promise of our covenant, devoted to a vision of a world made better. Inside the congregation is where we are challenged to become and to become yet again. Inside the congregation is where, for a moment, we can lay our burden down and find comfort before we go out into the world and love there too. The beloved community is a global vision of cultural diversity, and it is worth celebrating because cultural diversity benefits everyone. By embracing our diversity, we can learn more about our world, ourselves, and in turn, enable us to grow and thrive spiritually. It paves the way to better problem solving, more empathy, compassion, deepened learning, and approaches to the world from various perspectives, in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. In the beloved community, international disputes will be resolved by peaceful and conflict resolution and reconciliation of adversaries instead of military power. Love and trust will triumph over fear and hatred. Peace with justice will prevail over war and military conflict. All of these things are beautiful, but at times seem to be so far away. However, when we open our minds and hearts to understand and embrace celebrations that differ from our own, we're steps closer to building the beloved community.